Hey everybody, welcome to Keeping It Real. I'm Jay. So I wanted to come in and make a little video today talking about something that if you're on social media like I am, it doesn't matter whether you're on Twitter or Facebook, it sure seems like this is the topic of the day. Since the census came out, there's been a non-stop conversation about what does it mean to be Métis? Where does your identity come from? Who's claiming Métis identity? What makes a person Métis? Is it your ancestors? Is it your geographic location? You hear a lot about the conversation about it's not who you claim to be, it's not what you say, but who claims you back is equally important as who you claim. And I think that's partly true. I think and so it's really a conversation that's eating up a lot of space. And it's in a lot of, especially if you're on Facebook, in a lot of Facebook groups, it seems that there's a very nationalistic point of view saying that to be authentically Métis, you have to be part of Métis homeland. But I'm not sure what that really means historically. I know when we talk about a Métis homeland, we can talk about the Red River community, we can talk about the Manitoba Act. But historically, it really doesn't extend with any accuracy beyond that. I mean, Métis people were dispersed from the Red River community after that and went all over the place. But after the Red River experience, we have the records of the Script Commission that traveled northern Alberta and Saskatchewan. And when we talk about Métis identity being something other than First Nations and other than European, well, we see that the reality is for a lot of this, in the Script Commission reports, they didn't see any real physical difference or different people living in a different mode or function in northern Alberta and Saskatchewan. So based on the Métis having to be something that's not mixed but intrinsically different, we have this dichotomy where the Script Commission of many people who took Script in northern Alberta and Saskatchewan, that wasn't true for them. Literally, they were living next to their First Nations relations, and one day there was no difference. The next day, one took treaty, one took Script. So where does identity come from? First and foremost, it's you yourself and me myself have to stand up and be proud. You have to claim that identity. You've got to stand up and say that's who you are. But then I think in the modern context, you have to be part of a community. There has to be a group of collective people who stand up and recognize you as a person as part of that collective whole. Now, in doing so, I don't think that community has the autonomous ability to tell another community who inside that community is and is not Métis. How could I? I live out here. How could I come to your community and decide for you who's part of your community and who's not part of your community? That's just not equitable. I don't think that's how traditionally it worked either. So how do you claim this identity? A, stand up and be proud. If you're willing to show that you indeed come from Indigenous ancestry and that ancestry is mixed, and you want to participate and be a full functioning member of Métis society, I think that's admirable. I think that there's a lot of Métis people today who can show without a doubt their Métis ancestry, who are part of a historical Métis community, who don't do anything Métis, who if you will pass them on the street, you'd have no idea that they were from some historic Métis community or carried that identity with them. And so I think participating in the modern context, in the everyday life that you carry, is intrinsically important. But we have to be careful when we talk about who's Métis and who's not, that we're not using inflammatory terms like Métis identity is not a soup kitchen for those who want to belong. Well, of course it's not a soup kitchen. You can't just come to the counter and take what you like and leave what you don't like. That's not how it works. But at the same time, I haven't met anybody yet who says Métis is just mixed. End of story. Well, I don't know that person, so I don't know where that argument comes from. There's Métis people in the East who come from a mixed ancestry, but who carry on a culture, tradition that is not First Nations, and nor is it European. We have long records from the 1600s acknowledging these communities as other. So how does that invalidate their identity? And I think that's an important question. We talk about your identity and you claim it, and we talk about community and who claims you. And both these things can be are true of Métis communities right now in the East. And so we have to be careful that the language we use isn't to marginalize, I guess, other people. Just because it's not my experience, just because it's not my oral tradition or stories, doesn't mean it's invalid. Because that's basically telling everyone that if you're not my cup of tea, if you're not on my side of the counter, then your identity, your claim to identity, your community's traditions, your community's history is invalid because it's not mine. And I think that in of itself is really problematic. If we can't learn to sit down and build bridges and be inclusive, to understand each other, to find out what is our shared history and what is not, I think we're going to run into real problems. The whole concept of a Métis homeland is highly problematic for me. Métis people historically always lived inside and coexisted inside First Nations traditional territory. And if you think about that statement, I think this is why Powley and Harry Daniels never had Métis National Council or affiliate memberships, is because the concept of a homeland, where it was distinct, autonomous, jurisdictional land controlled solely under the control of Métis people, was really outside the framework of the historical Métis context. It's not that Métis communities in and of themselves didn't exercise those privileges and have that right, but where does our Indigenous ancestry and Indigenous identity flow from? What makes a Métis person Métis if it's not the land? Surely it can't be our political organizations. Like, that doesn't really make any sense to me. And if there's a Métis homeland, like the Métis National Council put forward, that takes up basically all of Western Canada, well, then we have to ask ourselves, well, First Nations people were here first, by definition, and Métis people came after, and the Métis people were here before the colonial government, and now the colonial government claims the land. Well, that really makes 3 layers of ownership. So who is authentically the owner? Is it the guy who came last, the guy who came in the middle, or the guy who came first? And I think this is the problem. If we're talking about a Métis homeland, that Métis homeland has to be taken into context with the fact that we've coexisted and always did with our First Nations relations, that we're related. Their ancestors are our ancestors, and so are the Europeans. I think that's the beauty of being Métis. It's both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And I've been to several reserves, at a few powwows, and you can talk to all kinds of First Nations people, and they'll already tell you that they are of mixed ancestry too. So that doesn't make them Métis, though. So what makes someone Métis? It's not just about mixed ancestry, but it's not just about a political activist movement that happened at Red River. It has to be something intrinsically more than both. And this is a whole discussion, I think, that needs to take place. That we need to have an honest discussion about what it means to be Métis. Métis people are a mixed people of a mixed ancestry of 2 different peoples that came together and made a new people, thus the Métis people. But we have to get past the insecurities of something that just because it's not mine makes it invalid. We have to get to know each other in our communities and where we all come from, so that we can get to understand each other and rebuild the bridges that have been broken. And we need to form a peoplehood. The Métis people are strong. We have just about 600,000 self-identifying Métis people across Canada. And we should be standing up to be proud. We should be standing up to be united, to forge that strength of numbers to the betterment of all Métis communities. We have Métis people living in poverty, we have people without benefits, we have people who have suffered through the 60 scoop and are excluded from compensation. We have all kinds of issues facing the Métis community, and yet most of my feed, most of everything I see on social media is about the jockeying for position over who is Métis and who's not. And I think that is a problem. When we start to decide for everybody else what a homogenized, boiled down, myopic Métis nation has to look like. I think the Métis people are a people. And we are a diverse people. We come from a massive landscape with diverse customs and traditions, but we have some very unifying factors. And I think we need to stop focusing on what makes us different and start focusing on what makes us the same. But that's just my 2 cents. And as you can see, there's not anybody but the trees here to back my opinion. So, if you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. By all means, please share with everyone you know. And until next time, keep it real.